But it was right into business courses. It was right into finance courses, accounting courses. I buckled down for a year or so when I was in college and just really focused on just, acclimating, getting grades and stuff like that. This was probably my most successful business, you could say. It was called Finance and Freedom. It's kind of like an online financial media brand. The core of it was being on Instagram. I would say I was like a first mover in that realm. It popped off for whatever reason, just because I was first mover and I was showing my face so people knew who I was. I didn't know where to start. I just started. That's what matters. I just put one step, or one foot in front of another.
Well, Noah, thanks for diving in today. I am stoked about this conversation. I know everyone's at different phases of their journey. Some people are just starting out. Some people are halfway through. Some people, sit back and they're like, oh, yes, this is a great journey that I've been on. And I've got maybe some things that I wish I did differently, but I'm excited of the path that I've been able to be on. And it all kind of leads to, this conversation all kind of leads to understanding your definition of success, which we'll get into at the end. But again, thank you, Noah, for diving into the conversation.
It's an honor to be here. Yeah, it's been a while since we got back together. So
yeah. It's going to be good.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Now, as we look at how the story started for you, can you tell me a little bit about where and how you were raised?
Yeah. Yep. So I was just turned 27 on Christmas. Born and raised in Flint, Michigan. Went to Flint schools my entire life. And grew up in a ethnically Polish, Eastern European household. So, raised Catholic, went to Catholic school early on in my life, went to Sunday school, did all that stuff. And I'm sharing this because the religious part played a big part in my upbringing. So my parents loved them to death. Mom and dad watched this.
Mm-hmm.
It was a strict Catholic household. It was very much about, achievement, accomplishment, pushing hard, like a type A personality. So they were very loving and supportive. They gave us everything we needed to succeed, which, we're very grateful and blessed for. And when I say we, I mean, my two siblings and I. But that didn't, that also came with challenges, because that can be quite exhausting when you got parents that expect nothing less than A's in every class that you take. Expect nothing less than making, the all-region team on the baseball team, right? But nonetheless, it's their way of parenting paid off for me, and where I'm at today. But so, it was a modest household. My parents I would label more as blue-collar type folk. I come from an engineering family, so I think you'll be happy to hear that. My father is a mechanical engineer for Stellantis now, but it wasn't like that his entire career. My mother is a dental assistant in Metamora. And then my brother, software engineer, sister works in HR in Ann Arbor. But I want to talk a little bit about my dad because, I'm very close with my father. Not that I'm not with my mother, but, the family dynamics. My father being an engineer, up until about 2010, 2011, he worked more on the factory side, the manufacturing side of the automotive space before becoming a professional engineer. And so we went through periods of time where, being the automotive space, like it's boom and bust, he was laid off for periods of time. And that's where we learned our deepest, the deepest lessons, because specifically in the great financial crisis back in 2007, 2008, we were hit hard as a family then. And my parents, were figuring out some marital issues. I'll just leave it at that. So there was family dynamics going on too. But my father had lost his job for like 9 to 10 months. And so it just led to some very hard times for us. We're almost living hand to mouth.
And how old were you during this? So this would have been...
So I was born in Christmas of 97. So at that time I was, 10 or 11.
10 or 11, okay.
Yeah, so young enough that I was naive, old enough to remember.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know entirely what was going on. But when I look back now, those were very challenging times. Like, I remember my father skipping meals at times so us kids could have more quality food. He'd stick with the PB&Js. I remember one time I got so desperate, right, where we were really pinching pennies that, we had a large bed, or he had a large bed, and he had asked all the kids, because he wasn't turning the heat up. It was like 60 degrees in the household, and he wanted to save money, right? He asked us, we all slept together in the same bed, and I just don't forget this. It's just crazy. We were complaining because we were cold. We're just 3 young kids. We're all cold.
Were you the youngest or the oldest?
I was the middle child.
Middle child. Okay.
So my brother's about 2 years older. My sister's about 2 years younger. And he's like, "Oh, just breathe under the covers. It'll help speed up, warm it up." And it's just, it's as crazy as that sounds. You just never forget that. And to this day, I'm just like, I never want to put my family in that situation. And I'm not indicting my father or anything, but I never want to get to that point. That was scar tissue immediately. So, those are the type of things that I grew up with, being in Flint, and with Flint being an automotive dominated, economic center. It had boom and bust cycles where sometimes it was very difficult, and you just don't forget those things. And everyone there was impacted. So it just sticks with you as you age.
So you're young, you're 10 years old, you're, getting A's in school, because that's
doing great.
At least you're trying to get A's in school, right? You're getting pushed to get A's in school. You're working through some of those dynamics at home. When was your first kind of, I don't want to say business interest, but when did you start getting interested in entrepreneurship and kind of your first business?
Yeah. I would say probably shortly thereafter, because again, there was financial issues obviously with the great financial crisis and everything that came with it. And I witnessed that firsthand in my household, and I didn't want to be that way when I was older. So, Google and YouTube were becoming more and more prevalent at that time. YouTube was still in its very, very early stages. But, I would just randomly research videos about how to make money, as basic as how to make money, or how to start a business, how to invest, very high level basic things. But then I would just go down these YouTube and Google University rabbit holes, and it caught fire. Like, it just had a fire within me. I was like, this is very interesting to me. I didn't rely on traditional education to figure that stuff out. I think a lot of folks, I think it needs to be taught in public education, like in the public school setting. But I think a lot of people, depend too much on that, or would depend too much on that. I think they need to kind of get out there and learn on their own. And Google and YouTube University is what I call them. They're free. You can go do that anytime. So I would say around 12, 13 is when I really started getting interested in that. And right around that same time, like the 12 to 14 years old. So we're talking later middle school, early high school. That's when I actually started like really making money, like working. So one of my first jobs was being a vendor at Spartan Stadium. So I'm a Sparty fan. And this is also where, I started my sales career, I'd say. You got the guys and the gals that walk around with hot chocolate and water around their chests and stuff, and are screaming at you to buy it and all that stuff. That's what I did for a couple years with my buddies. One of my buddies had a family friend that they had a stall there, and 100% commission based. You took home 10% of everything that you sold. $7 hot chocolates, $4 waters. And so, my friends, they varied in terms of seriousness. Some of my friends just kind of watched the football game and didn't really care. And if people came up to them to buy it, that's great. I was going around, I was screaming at people and out there hustling. I was making about $80 to $100 a game.
Wow.
And at that time, as a young kid too, I was just, oh my God, I'm rich, And, So I started saving a little bit of money, and my dad was and has always been interested in stocks, and he's a seasoned investor at this point. And I remember 14, 15 years old, freshman year of high school, getting a custodial account through my father. And the first stock I invested in was ConocoPhillips at the time. It was an oil company. And again, this is the naive, ignorant part of me. Like, I held it for like a month and I lost like a little bit of money on it because I didn't know what I was doing, and my dad was just letting me just kind of learn and figure it out myself. But that was the center point for me. That's where it all started. And then from there, just, over time, I just accumulated my own knowledge, again, through Google and YouTube, and then just through lived experience too. That's kind of where it all started. But especially the sales and the entrepreneurial spirit, vending at Spartan Stadium was the center of it all. That's where it all started.
What'd you like most about that? Like,
I think there was a competitive piece of it, right? You wanted to beat your friends, because like the top salesman or whatever, they would get like some like $25 bonus at the end, which I won, I think, once or twice. But I don't know, it's just the interaction. I just like being around that huge crowd of people. And, being from Flint, like, there was tons of Sparty fans in Flint. Flint's only 50 minutes away from Lansing, roughly. So I'd run into people from my high school and my community sometimes. And I don't know, it's just the interaction. I just enjoyed it, In
the competitive side, did you play sports?
Yeah. Played baseball for 15 years of my life. I did play football and basketball, but quickly figured out basketball was not for me. Football, I was decent, but I stopped going when I got into high school because the risk reward wasn't there for me, and I felt like baseball I could go further, which I did. I did go further in baseball, so there was that competitive edge has always been within me, and that's what I enjoyed most.
So you're in high school slinging hot dogs in waters faster than your friends and earning some good money in the process.
Yeah.
Trying to do a little bit of investing. Then what's that next phase when you jump into, graduation and after that?
Yeah. Yep. So, in high school, they have you take those like career surveys, and it tells you what you're going to be or what you could be. That's where I started to kind of filter out and determine, like, okay, engineering probably wasn't going to be around. I took AP Calc, and, I have a math mind just because of this family I come from. But after I took AP Calc, I was like, I don't want to go through that again. In engineering, it's a further than that. There's other math courses you have to take. And I was like, okay, engineering's probably not it. Healthcare, I had no goals whatsoever to be involved with blood, guts, and all that other stuff. That stuff made me nauseous. But I had a particular interest for, just business in general, money, finance. I was good at financial math. I really enjoyed that. So I was like, okay, well, near end of high school, I was looking at colleges. Two came to mind. I had Grand Valley, and I had Northwood University, which is my alma mater. Grand Valley I had applied to, but they didn't really give me that much money. Northwood essentially almost paid for everything. So I was kind of a nerd in high school, I got really good grades, and I didn't want to be saddled with a bunch of debt. So, Northwood it was. And the beautiful thing about Northwood is that I didn't have to take any fluff courses. I wasn't taking underwater basket weaving or anything like that. It was right into business.
You really missed out.
No, but it was right into business courses. It was right into finance courses, accounting courses. And so that was the next step for me. And I just kind of embraced that. I buckled down for a year or so when I was in college and just really focused on just, acclimating, getting good grades and stuff like that. And then from there, that's where I actually started trying to start businesses when I was there because I had free time, believe it or not. I was taking like 18 credits a semester. I did a 3-year bachelor program there. But still, I wouldn't say business school is rocket science, So I didn't have to study all the time like engineers do or nursing students. So on the side, I was just kind of toiling with online businesses and stuff like that.
Before you got to school, you mentioned that you kind of had a math brain.
Yeah.
And then you said because of the family that I was raised in, or the type of family. And I understand you were saying, your father was an engineer, your brother, and that kind of maybe runs in the family a little bit. Do you think that it was just the way that, your family talked around the house that made you kind of catch on to the math things a little bit easier? Or is there anything particular that you pick up on that these are things that happened at the dinner table that probably helped me develop more of a math brain?
I think a large piece of it is just genetic. I think a large piece of it is just genetically we were blessed with math brains. But I think my parents' push to do well in school, absolutely. They were very involved in our lives. They weren't helicopter parents, but again, if we were taking home like a B+ in a class, they were not. That was a no-no, And so they were very on top of our academic studies. And so we developed like good study habits, doing homework and assignments on time, and just putting our best foot forward in every class, even if we had no interest in it or if it was challenging. So we just put more time into it. And so the likelihood of success was higher. And again, that comes from my parents' push. They were really involved. They weren't laissez-faire type parents. They were very much on top of us, and you get your stuff done or, there will be consequences. So
yeah.
That's
and you learned that work ethic towards school early on, which then you took with you in college, which helped you perceive, the business classes as easy, right?
Yeah.
And kudos to you for putting your grades out there online, because I know that you do that too, and you show the world what you've done. And
hopefully people don't interpret that.
Yeah, the proof is out there that you worked hard in school and you did a good job, and that's what I was curious to dive a little bit into too, is if you felt like that was something that it was tough for you, or if it, because of the way that you were raised, that came a little bit easier. And it sounds like because of some of the work ethic and things that were instilled in you and your knack for math and different things, it was a little bit easier for you to get into school. Is that fair?
Yeah, I would say it's a mixed bag. And I would also say too, again, we were blessed because I wasn't going home. I didn't have to worry if I was going to eat dinner or not, I didn't have to worry about where I was going to sleep that night, so these things are seen as basic, but there were kids I went to school with that didn't have that luxury. Sometimes they'd have to skip meals or they would bounce around different homes. That makes it much harder. Not having those basic necessities, or what we view as basic, makes it much harder to perform, because you're just kind of worried about survival. We didn't have to worry about survival to that degree. Right? My parents made enough sacrifices that we've seen, but still enabled us to focus on our studies, on sports, and just being kids. So for that, we're blessed too. But of course, so it is a mixed bag of, them being on top of us, instilling that work ethic, being involved. There's a genetics piece, of course, and then, giving us all the tools that we need to succeed. So
perfect. And then, so you're in school, you're succeeding, in the classes, getting good grades, picking up some skills that you can take on with you. What are some of the, as you look back, like maybe some of the things that you appreciated most about that time of your life?
About like the early days of school and
or college.
Yeah. It was the mix of people that I ran into.
Okay.
Northwood especially, there was a lot of international students there. So, both from, or I would say from like Netherlands, Switzerland, Germany, Japan, China. I mean, from all walks of life had come there just to do better and for an opportunity. So I met a wide array of folks there that just gave me perspective on life, right? This is just lived experience now. So I'm hearing how they had grown up and how they go about positioning themselves and pursuing excellence. So I look back fondly on just some of the folks I met in those classes, and I'm still friends with several of them today. Maybe not like best friends, but we still remain in contact periodically. I would say the independence piece was huge. Like your schedule is still somewhat set out for you because you have to have a certain course load, but it's not like high school. You're not going home to mom and dad. You're living in the dorms or you're living off campus, and so you have a ton of free time. At least that was my experience. You have a ton of free time to kind of do with as you see fit. And so you can either squander it and go party and all that stuff, which I did party sometimes, yes. But, I also took the opportunity to have internships or to pursue internships and to start the side businesses or to do little side hustles. And again, this is just an enrichment period to where I was just becoming an adult, becoming a young man, and figuring things out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not under mom and dad's roof anymore. So
yeah,
I really enjoyed that.
And you carried some of the values that you learned from childhood into college, which
Absolutely.
makes sense. And that led towards you investing your time in certain ways, which, side hustles, let's get into that. I know we started the conversation, but tell me a little bit about some of the side hustles that you had in college.
Yeah. So aside from like little jobs, so I did have a couple jobs on campus. So I was a tutor and I would get paid for that. But that was maybe like 10, 12 hours a week. Periodically I would participate, like some colleges have like fundraising, like student fundraising campaigns,
mm-hmm.
where like you'll call alumni and stuff like that. I did that.
Ooh.
So that was another, I didn't even think about that until now we're talking about it, but that was another sales based, experience. And I did make some sales. So I did that for money, but then actual side hustles outside of organized jobs. It's so funny to share this, but my friends will laugh if they watch this. This is back in 2017, 2018. So this is when money went a little bit further. I didn't really, again, college, people drink and stuff like that. This is pretty obvious. I didn't really participate that much, at least on campus. And, there would be these huge frat parties. Northwood had a lot of frats and sororities, so I wasn't part of any. So I had friends that were part of them. And so I would ask if I could come pick up the cans from all these parties. And again, you're talking at such scale where it was actually meaningful money to me at the time, right? I didn't have, I was a broke college student. So to me, like $40-$50 was like, holy smokes. That's like a week and a half worth of groceries
mm-hmm.
or gas money, whatever. I would do that consistently. I remember it got to the point where I was so obsessed with just collecting cans and bottles. Anytime I went to a gas station, they got those trash cans in the middle of the pumps and stuff like that. I'd look in there.
Just kind of got in the mindset of it.
I'd look in there. It was kind of gross, but I would find plenty of cans and bottles in there, and I just collect them and return them periodically. I would do this consistently, and I kept a tally of one time of how much I collected over time. It was hundreds of dollars. But I consider that the side hustle because I was taking my extra time to generate some sort of money, right? Or some sort of income.
Was it the thrill of the game or was it the money? Like,
it was both.
Yeah.
Though that grocery money was valuable at the time.
Yeah.
And that money went a little bit further at that. It was, hard to believe. It was 7 years ago. But also it's just, this will stem into also the other businesses that I own too, because this bleeds into them. But it was just, it was interesting. I can't explain it. It was just fun. And I loved talking about it for some reason. It was kind of nerdy, but
like that's what I'm curious about, because it's like you found enjoyment in searching for cans after parties and in trash cans right. And a lot of people are like, dude, that's not fun. But you're able to, and also same with slinging hot dogs and, selling waters at a football game. People are like, I don't know. Like, that seems like a lot of work, or that seems like something that's putting yourself out there, which could be uncomfortable and something that doesn't, but you found a way to turn it into a competition the first time. And then,
or just have fun with it. I just
not take it too seriously.
I never take anything too seriously. I'm not that serious. There are things in life that are serious, of course, but generally speaking, I just don't take myself that seriously. So yeah, I just enjoyed it. And then, I don't know, I got a thrill from it. And I had friends that would tag along and just do it with me for whatever reason. I remember this huge haul I got from a frat party, and there was just a garage full. I mean, it was chock full of cans. I mean, like, it took me like an hour to haul all the cans out. And I had I can't remember what car I had at the time. It was like a Jeep Liberty. So I think that thing had to be packed to the gills. I might have had to done 2 runs or something. But
just like a frequent flyer at Meijer or something. Like, man, well, you need to talk to Noah.
See me come in. And so, do you want me to go into how that goes into the online business?
Sure.
So, this was probably my most successful business, you could say. It was called Finance and Freedom. It's kind of like an online financial media brand. And essentially, it was nothing more than me in the core of it was being on Instagram. I would say I was like a first mover in that realm because there wasn't many finance pages on Instagram at the time. So it was a fledgling space on Instagram. But it was called Finance and Freedom. And I would just talk about everything I found interesting, from just general business topics to economics, because I studied economics in college, to stocks, real estate, even though I wasn't necessarily some legendary investor, but I would just talk about certain topics that I found interesting. And sometimes I would analyze companies like on Instagram lives and stuff like that. And I would create posts and stuff like that. And over time, this was like late summer 2018 is when I really started it. It popped off for whatever reason, just because I was a first mover and I was showing my face so people knew who I was. But I quickly grew from like 0 to 10,000 followers in like a month and a half. And I was like, okay, this is pretty weird. That I was taken aback. I didn't know how to handle it. But one of the things that I documented and posted on that page was was a pop can and bottle haul. So I literally, one of my buddies, his name's Elijah. So shout out to him, because he literally recorded me going into a Meijer with all these cans and bottles and stuff like that and returning them at a Meijer in Midland. And, I just talked about why I did it, what the total amount was and stuff like that. And I kept a tally for my followers. And, it's social media, so you're going to be opening yourself up to hate and stuff. And so I would get some comments that were blazing me, for being a bum and everything, which I thought was hilarious, actually. But then others were like, oh my God, I started doing this now too. I'm in college. I'm going to the sororities and the frats, and I'm going to pick up all these cans and stuff. And so that page, so that was just one of the segments I had on that page. But I just continued sharing and talking about finance topics and stuff like that, and how I was making money and navigating personal finances in college. And to a lesser degree, I would also talk about my internship experiences, because I had 3 different internships when I was in college. I had 3 different companies in 3 different industries, and the page just continued to explode. So by the end of 2018, I had surpassed 50,000 followers, and I was generating millions of impressions on Instagram. And again, this is 2018, 2019 Instagram. So this, like, there was a lot of features that did not exist at the time there. And so, I would sell ad space on that Instagram in posts and captions and on Instagram stories. And so I was starting to generate income from that page and from that presence. I was starting to monetize the eyeballs. And so it got to the point where I was making like $2,000 a month. And I was like, I'm going to retire. I was like, This is crazy. So then fast forward to like March of 2019. At the start of 2019 through March, I had gone through like a 90-day period where I was gaining over 1,000 followers a day every day. So like 90 days consecutively, over 1,000 followers a day.
Now, how often were you putting content up?
It was like once or twice a day.
Okay. So
at night after classes and stuff like that, I was just making these infographics and all these other things. And, I didn't have anyone else doing it. I figured it out. I can't remember it was part Canva, and I can't remember the other like free software I used to make these things. It was just, such a great experience. Like I look back on it so fondly. But I didn't know what to do with it because it had become so successful to the point where in March of 2019, it surpassed 120,000 followers. And I had followers in over 100 countries. And I had over 100 million impressions. And I was talking to like, famous folks in the investing and finance space. Like, whatever you think about Grant Cardone, at the time I thought he was cool. I had been talking to him, Robert Kiyosaki as well. Again, whatever surrounds those guys is what it is. But I had been talking to him at the time. And I just thought it was incredible. But success is like oddly, that was success relative to me, but it's oddly enough, it's overwhelming. So I didn't know what to do. Like, how do I expand it? How do I grow it? And this is probably one of my only regrets in life is that in March of 2019, I sold that brand. And I sold it to a woman by the name of Genevieve Rockdector. And she's in Toronto, Canada. But she had a company called Grit Capital, which she just recently sold it, probably like a month or two ago. But I sold it to her at the time, and I made a large sum of money. And so, whatever student debt I had paid it off. So I was all free. And then I just used the rest of it to invest in stocks at the time, which were like AbbVie, Apple, and at the time AT&T. So I don't want to go too much into the weeds there, but it just was an incredible experience. That was like my first successful business and then exit.
Yeah. Now backing up to when that whole Instagram story started, like what you talked about the YouTube, the school of YouTube, like being able to figure things out on YouTube, but like what do you remember what caused you to get that channel started in the first place or get that page started on Instagram? It's kind of,
I think I had come across a few, like I said, it was a very fledgling space, but I had come across a few pages like that in the summer of 2018. And this is when I lived in Ann Arbor. So I was a bachelor. I was just thinking of things to do because outside of work, I was just, what do I do? I just partied all the time. I was just stupid. I had no interest. And so I had come across posts on these pages and I was like, I feel like I can do that. I feel like I had enough knowledge, accumulated enough knowledge at that time to just at least be somewhat helpful. Again, I'm no Warren Buffett. I wasn't Warren Buffett at the time and never will be. But I feel like I feel like I can reach someone at least and at least, inspire someone because of my interest in the space of personal finance, investing, and all that. So that's really what encouraged me to start it. And I didn't know where to start. I just started. That's what matters. I just put one step, or one foot in front of another. That's pretty much it.
Kind of goes back to like, you had a story of going and selling hot dogs and water. I'm going back to that, putting yourself out there in a space where people would be like, okay, that's, that could be intimidating. That, I know you're in high school, but, that could be intimidating. And then you're putting yourself out there again by going picking up cans afterwards. People are like, okay, that's something maybe I wouldn't put myself through or do.
That is pretty weird.
And then you turned around and put yourself online in a scenario that people would be like, okay, now you're just opening up the door for a bunch of hate, right? And then you said, like, I don't take myself too seriously.
No.
And it's almost like that mindset or that idea is what allowed you to be able to do some of those things.
Right, because I didn't have any expectations. I just was like, I'm just going to do it because I enjoy it, and I just didn't have any fear. at the time. And you know, as much hate as I did get a lot. I also got a lot of love. You know, like there are people that I talk to this day that still remember that page that I follow on LinkedIn or that I follow on other social media that know me from that page, and I still talk to them periodically, which is just remarkable. Like you can only do that from social media, you know, and they're all great people. They're all successful in their own rights. And just, it's been an honor to at least inspire them a little bit. Again, I'm not some legendary investor or business owner or whatever. I'm just a regular guy that has an obsession or an extreme interest in the personal finance and investing space. And it was so much so that I would just share my experiences as I was living and learning, and people flocked to that because it was just an energy. They felt attracted to that energy, and so they followed. So yeah, it was, I look back on that time so fondly because it was just such a great experience, but I do wish I held on to it. I just didn't know what to do. I was like, how do I expand it? I started to stress myself out because I don't come from an entrepreneurial family. So, and I didn't have the appropriate mentors in my life at the time to like, you should do this with that, or this is how you expand it, or whatever.
Did you have mentors in your life through up to that point for any other aspects? Like,
you know, other than my parents, and maybe a couple choice professors, not really outside of that, you know. So a lot of it was just kind of stumble and learn. But you know, up to the and the current, and right now I mentors.
Yeah. So when you're thinking about the Instagram page, I'm curious, like you said, you didn't know what to do with it. So you decided to sell it. How did you even learn how to sell it?
They approached me.
Okay. So someone approached you and at a time when you were confused on like what you wanted to do with it anyway.
Yeah, so it was good timing on their part to buy it. But they approached me, and you know, we negotiated back and forth on price. And you know, other than the actual income that page generated monthly, it's hard to put a value on that price because, or excuse me, it's hard to put a value on that page because you're buying eyeballs. It's essentially what you're buying, right? Because they had a different idea of what they wanted to do with that audience. So at that point, you're talking about unique views, impressions, and, you know, follower growth, which I was at the height at that time. I was at the peak. I was probably one of the largest, if not the largest, in that space at the time.
But your face is on that, right? It's you.
It was periodically. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So
they were able to make that transition, and
yeah, and at the time, the feature to where like you could archive posts was available. So like if they had anything with my face, they could archive it.
Okay.
So yeah. But when we were negotiating the price and stuff, again, these folks were in Canada, and so they were like, let's meet in Detroit and we'll do a cash deal. I was like, okay. My parents were so skeptical. They're like,
I couldn't imagine.
They were like, dude, that sounds so freaking sketchy.
Yeah.
I said, screw it, whatever. So I did it. And I met them in person, and they literally handed me an envelope full of cash. It was like, yeah, it was crazy. But it worked out. I did report those funds to the IRS, by the way. So if any IRS agents are watching this, yes,
they're already at the door. It's fine.
I did report that income, but yeah, it was unbelievable, crazy experience for a young guy. But again, if I look back, I would have done it a little bit differently. But you know, it's still a great experience.
So that is something that, you know, you look back at, you're like, okay, well, I kind of started the channel because I saw other people doing it and I thought it'd be fun and I was looking for something to do in my free time. I had no idea that it could get to this level or grow to this level. So, and you said it, you weren't the person that could handle that type of growth at that time in your life.
Yeah.
But I am curious, as you're going through and looking back, like what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced through some of that? Because it wasn't all easy.
Yeah. No, it was the content creation was the hardest part. It was just coming up with new ideas. And staying creative, staying ahead of the curve, because as 2019 rolled around, there was a ton of competition and entering that space, that field on Instagram. And so, you know, instead of maybe 10 prominent pages I was competing against, it was like 100. And also, what am I trying to say? Like pirating. People would pirate my content and would just post it without giving credit and stuff like that. Which was kind of funny. Like, it was kind of funny because I still have my personal page. So like, I'd go to, like explore and I'd see my content, but it wasn't my page. I was like, and then I would go on my regular page, on the page, and I'm comment like, where's it? You can't provide credit. So I started watermarking the content so they couldn't, so it would have some protection. That was very difficult. And bots, like scam comments, you probably see it on LinkedIn. They've flocked to LinkedIn now. My goodness, I would block like 100 of them a day, but they just kept coming. So that was just always annoying. I'd have to put like a disclaimer in the captions. I'm like, these comments are scams. Do not pay attention to them, and do not do anything that they're telling you to do. It was like crypto stuff, and yeah, it was just corny. So things like that to kind of protect the brand, and then just competing against other financial media brands. That was the toughest part, for sure.
So then after that phase, you jumped into, or season in your life, you jumped into banking.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about that.
So the last internship of my college career was summer 2019. It's at Huntington Bank. And that was I was a middle market intern at their location in Columbus, their headquarters in Columbus. And it was a great time. Columbus is a very underrated city, by the way. I'm not an Ohio State fan, but Columbus is a very underrated city. It was a great time. So, they hired me. I did that for 3 months. I learned a lot. I enjoyed it. And I was like, maybe I could do this as a career. And they liked me, and they said, hey, we want to hire you. How about Grand Rapids? I said, okay, that's probably better than Flint, And so I moved up to Grand Rapids September of 2019. And again, like, I had, other than a couple of friends that I wasn't super close with that went to Grand Valley, I didn't have any connections here. I had no connections. So being the middle child, of course, I was just like, oh, screw it. I'm going to go blaze a trail. And so moved here in September 2019, and I was a lowly credit analyst at the time. And I mean that respectfully, but I was low on the totem pole in the middle market banking group. So my boss at the time was Paul McMahon, and great guy, and he was a great mentor, as well as Todd Metadorp, who was on the sales side in the middle market group at the time. And I actually went to school with his son at Northwood, so I had a little tie there. But both great guys, both great mentors, and that group there, I can't say enough good things about them because they were very welcoming and very warm. And so they gave me the environment I needed to, feel comfortable and to take some calculated risks and learn on the job. And, so that was the start of my banking career. And so, for the next, I would say from September 2019 to June of 2021, I was in the underwriting space in the middle market group at Huntington. So I worked my way from an intern all the way to a senior analyst. And like the last few months as a senior analyst, I was basically an underwriter, but I wasn't getting the pay or the recognition for it. So, I'd gone through credit college, which is like formal credit training and stuff like that. So that was important to have under my belt. And I was reaching the point where I was tired of being on that side of the business. Again, just knowing me, I was more oriented for the sales side to be in front of people. And so I was ready to make that move. And what was her name? Nicole from PNC Bank. I think she's based in Pittsburgh. Nicole from PNC Bank reached out to me, and she said they had an associate relationship manager roll up in West Michigan at PNC. So, I would be on the sales side, but I wouldn't have a book of business, and I wouldn't be held to certain sales goals. And my boss at the time was Tim Davison. So I had interviewed with him and some other leaders at the PNC bank, at the PNC office in downtown. And, it went very well, and I joined PNC in June of 2021. So I officially had made my move to the sales side, and it was off to the races. They had a description for that ARM role, but they basically said, you make it as you see fit. You kind of build your own ship here. And so having been told that, for me, it wasn't, I had to support the other 7 relationship managers who actually had clients and had goals. So I did support them, but I went heavy into business development, which is where I originally reached out to you, because you were running perception engineering at the time. And so I was trying to meet anyone and everyone that owned a business, that was an executive, you name it. I was just trying to get out there and let them know that I exist, that I'm open and ready to do business. And being in ARM was awesome. That was a great, I wasn't held to a sales goal, so I wasn't sweating or anything. And I really, really honed in my sales skills there and my prospecting abilities. I had to get very unorthodox with my prospecting. So went all in, and eventually became an RM, and I did that for roughly a year and a half before moving on to my next career. So I spent about 5 years in banking, about half and half underwriting, and then the half in sales. And it was a good time. It was well worth it.
Now, through that transition into banking, it sounds like you've had some great resources or mentors that have poured into you, and some great managers that have poured into you, and they've helped you see, the path from one position to the next position.
Absolutely.
Have you had that same type of opportunity now with where you're at to work with those that, maybe you can pour back into? Is that part of your story?
Yeah. So you're talking about me becoming more of a mentor?
Mm-hmm.
I would say so, not in the specific industry I work in now. So I work at, Alera Group, which was formerly known as Lighthouse Group. So on the commercial risk management space, commercial insurance. At this point, and at Alera, I'm not a mentor to anyone necessarily. I am a valued part of the team, and everyone there sees me as an equal, which is awesome. It's a great environment. Now, there are other folks in other industries that do contact me periodically that I went to school with or I just have met in passing, and they do seek counsel in me, and it's not even necessarily about business or anything like that. It could be just general life things, marriage, relationship things, home ownership, buying your first rental property, even just basic investing, things like that. I get those actually quite a bit, and I enjoy those type of conversations because, again, they're casual, and it's just heart to heart human connection, and everyone's trying to make it, everyone's trying to be successful, and so those type of conversations I really enjoy. So I have had the pleasure in doing some of that, but as it stands right now in my current position, I'm not in that capacity quite yet.
So thinking about, the different opportunities that you've had, and you had some chances in college to, which a lot of people do, you can either go right or you can go left. It's the fork in the road in a lot of different scenarios. You have the chance to be involved with the frat parties or pick up after them and turn that into a side hustle, right?
Yeah.
I not only did it take a lot of I don't take myself too seriously, but it took a lot of self-discipline and maybe some habits or some, things that you've had to intentionally set up in your life, maybe from that age, but even that going to today. Is there any specific habits or routines that you think about and you're like, okay, wow, that's something that's really helped me, throughout my journey?
Well, I mean, sales specifically, you've really got to have systems in place. If you're going to be in a sales role, you've got to be a self-starter. You have to have systems and a certain disciplines in place. In terms of putting a name to some, I would say consistently getting up early, at least for me, has worked. Everyone's got a different circadian rhythm, but for me to get up early and take out the dog, get a little bite to eat, get hydrated, and kind of get excited to tackle the day. I would say just that general that general way of being has helped me.
How do you get excited to tackle the day?
I think about the names I'm going to call. I think about the companies I could work with. You know, the people I want to meet and get in touch with, the businesses that I want to learn about. That's what's most fun about being in sales. That's not even just selling insurance.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably the most boring part. The most exciting part is learning how a business has come to be and how it operates behind the scenes. A lot of people, a lot of folks just on the street don't get to see businesses behind the scenes, and there's a lot of under the radar businesses that run the local, regional, and national economy, especially here in West Michigan with a huge manufacturing base. There's just a lot of amazing companies that people don't know about and don't get to learn about or see behind the scenes. And I have the opportunity and the honor and the pleasure to do that. And so that's what excites me. And that was what really drove me in banking too. It wasn't reviewing loan documents. It wasn't underwriting. That stuff was not fun. It was learning about businesses, and then the human element too, learning about the business owners, because entrepreneurs and business owners, they're the cream of the crop. If you really think about it, they take immense risk, and they employ other people, and they have stakeholders across the chain. They have customers, they have vendors, they have employees to take care of. So, that being said, those type of folks are very interesting folks, and there's such a wide variety of them. They're not all the same. So that excites me day in and day out. And also, just being out and about, not behind the desk, it's not hard to love it. So
yeah, if you enjoy what you do, then literally when you wake up in the morning, just think about what you get the opportunity to do gets you excited.
Yeah. And you know what too? Alera and Lighthouse, it's just an all-star team there that you have pretty much everyone there is the same way. And so you can't help but feel excited and energized to go be active out there in the community and go meet people. So, kudos to them, and it's a great environment.
Yeah. You've talked through several different phases or seasons of your life, and you just started a new season in September of last year.
Yeah, December. Yeah.
December of last year.
Oh, are you talking marriage?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, September. Yes.
Okay. You forgot already. September.
Tell my wife.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit. How has that changed things for you? And has that encouraged or excited you even more about the future of your financial situation, but also your career path?
Well, it ups the ante.
Yeah.
Sure. Because, as a man, I think we're biologically wired, generally speaking, that we want to provide for our families. We want to be the ones that protect, provide, and are looked to as leaders. And, my wife and I have a fantastic relationship. I love her dearly. And that's how she views me. She views me as the leader of the family and as the provider. She has a great job as a nurse at Helen DeVos. She has a fantastic job. But, her goal down the line is to have the option to either go part-time or be a stay-at-home mother. And, kids are in the cards, but probably a couple years away. She turns 25 in June. So we're still both young. But, to be able to afford her the opportunity to do that would be the greatest honor of my life. And so I have that extra motivation and that extra push to go above and beyond and to not sell myself short every day. I want to go above and beyond and crush it out there. So family is just extremely important. Kayla comes from a large family. My family's more small, lone wolf type, Kayla's family is very close knit, and more numerous in nature than mine. And so to have married into a family like that, it's the biggest blessing ever. She's actually from West Michigan. She's from South Kalamazoo, Three Rivers area. So she's a country gal, graduated in the class of 50. So she's salt of the earth. Her family are too. They're very, very simple folk, and I mean that in the best way. Yeah, what a blessing it is to be able to marry the love of your life. And I don't know how people will perceive this, but we met on Tinder back in 2020. So I'm not afraid to admit that. COVID, COVID was a thing at that point. So how am I gonna go meet women?
Mm-hmm.
That's how I had to be. So I met her online, and it was just, you can probably relate with Anna, right? You meet in person for the first time, and it's just like there's an intangible chemistry or intangible spark. You just can't put your finger on it. That's how it was instantly with Kayla and I, and we've been together for over 4 years now. And the marriage last September between us, I mean, that was the cherry on top. That was tying it all up, and one day I'm excited to be a father.
Yeah. No, congrats again. That is exciting. And as you're thinking about your journey, and thank you for sharing so much about it, even if you had the chance to, step back to middle school time frame and, tell yourself or be a mentor for yourself during that time period, like what's one piece of advice that you might give yourself that that you would receive and that could encourage you to continue on?
I would say be a little bit easier on yourself. Maybe this is all young folks because they're just learning and figuring it out and growing. There was times where I was pretty hard on myself, even though I was not very serious. In my head, there was times where I was hard on myself, and I was like, why didn't you do it this way, or why didn't you talk to that person, or why didn't you get this job, or again, this is dating back to middle school, high school, and so I'd say just take it a little bit easier on yourself. Things take time. Naturally, being a type A, I can be impatient sometimes. So I would say don't be too hard on yourself. Be a little bit more patient, and enjoy the simple things. The things that we all take for granted. That you can go home and see your wife and your dog, and for many of us, your kids. You can you get warm food in your belly. You have a warm bed to sleep in. I mean, you live better than 95% of humans in the entire history of the world. So just don't forget that. Don't lose perspective. Don't lose perspective. That's where I'd leave it.
Love it. Now, looking back, what do you think is the thing that you've accomplished that you're most proud of?
Thing I'm most proud of, I would say, I don't know if it's a cliche, but I have to say my marriage. It's probably the most important decision I'll ever make in my life. Choosing my lifelong partner, one that I'm going to have children with. So, that is a huge decision, and I don't take it lightly. And I think I know that I found the one. Kayla's the love of my life, and that is the most important decision I've ever made and will ever make in my life.
Yeah, I appreciate that answer, and I respect it, and it's definitely something that as you're even looking back and thinking through, and we've been talking a lot about business and a lot about financial gain and a lot about, even the opportunity that you had to sell your channel and things that you've done on Instagram, and there's a lot there that brought to you financial, stability and financial success in some ways. But what you're most proud of is that relationship that you're able to grow and continue on into the future. So that's awesome.
I'm sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
The money, the success, all that stuff, that comes and goes. People don't remember that long. The family, the marriage, the lifelong partner, that's forever. Because I don't know that anyone on their deathbed has ever said they wanted to make an extra dollar. Who cares? There comes a point where you've made enough money and you have everything you want. What does an extra dollar or two or whatever make? What does it mean? Practically nothing. So
that leads into just the final question that I have for you. And it really, you've done a great job of breaking down some of the scenarios that have led to different decisions in your life, the way that you were raised, some of the things that happened throughout your college career, and some of the entrepreneurship ventures that you've had and side hustles, you called them. But really, how has that and how it's led to your definition of success? Really, what I want to know is, what is your definition of success?
Oh, my personal definition, because as you know, it's all subjective. Um, I would say the ultimate definition of success for me would be owing no man, so debt free, which will be there. We'll get there one day. I would say, having some money in the bank, whatever amount, having a wonderful and loving partner in life. If kids are your choice, great. For me, for my wife and I, they will be. So children, because they're a tremendous blessing, as you know yourself, right? Fulfilling career, of course, that is fantastic. I mean, we work most of our lives. You have to be doing something that you enjoy and you feel that makes an impact and benefits the community. And then I would say the quote unquote extracurriculars, things that you do outside of work that you do for free just because you love them. So for Kayla and I, that's like gardening. Love gardening, hiking, kayaking, being on the pontoon. That definitely is not free, but we do it for free. And things like that, things that, you can find joy in outside of your job, because your job is not your life. Although we work, a majority of our lives. I don't assign my identity to my job or my career. Life is much more than that. So that was kind of a long answer.
No, I appreciate your definition, and it's definitely, well-rounded and definitely something that I can see ties back to your story. So thanks again for coming on and sharing not only your journey, where you're at and what you're excited about in the future of your journey, but your definition of success with us today. So thanks again, Noah.
It's been a blast. Yeah. Thanks for having me.